there is a brouhaha going on yet once again amongst Reformed folks regarding the statements of John Piper on the subject of final justification. And from what I've seen, I haven't had a whole lot of time to be looking at it, but from what I've seen, there are some Presbyterian ministers who have actually volunteered to fly down to Escondido and have it out with some other Presbyterian ministers, or maybe even with Doug Wilson or something. I'm not sure exactly who's on what side of everything, but there's some strong feelings being expressed. On the one side, the direct assertion that Piper's position fundamentally violates not only Orthodox confessional Reformed statements, whether it be Westminster or whatever else, and the catechisms and things, but that it is a fundamental abandonment of Reformed theology in toto and of the gospel. And I think I've seen a few people throwing him under the bus too. And then on the other side, we have people saying, look, you people just haven't read enough of the Reformers at all. And they're quoting all sorts of folks that talk about the absolute importance of good works in the Christian life, and that it's not something that adds to the righteousness of Christ, but it's something that is absolutely necessary to demonstrate. You have both sides going at it fork and tongue, and it seems to me that sort of like, only last year in the Trinitarian controversy, that we're just really, 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 really good at taking sides. And once you've taken sides, there's just, it's all, I don't know, maybe it's the warring children of Calvin, but the idea of going, well, okay, I see what you're saying there. I wouldn't put it that way myself, but okay, I can see what you're saying there. That's almost like not a possibility. Like you're a compromising liberal if you say that. It's just like, okay, how many angels can sit on the head of a pin? You know, we evidently just can answer every question to the nth degree, and there's never going to be a disagreement. Here's my take. I don't know John Piper. We've never spoken. We've never met, never spoken. I think he probably wants to stay as far away from me as possible. I think there's a lot of people that want to stay as far away from me as possible, and if that's my lot in life, so be it. Huh? Rich said I'm stuck with him, and I'm not sure if I'm even going to respond to that. And then there are some people that you're stuck with, and you can't get away from. I don't know John Piper, so I can't just go calling John Piper up and go, hey, am I reading you right here? And back in the 90s, there was a book, Future Grace, that I think, and I haven't checked this out, but I think went through some revision because there were some statements that Piper was convinced to sort of modify. I could be wrong about that, but that's my recollection. My reading of all this, without being able to ask Piper, my reading of all this would seem to indicate this. It sounds like what Piper is saying is he's focusing upon the justification of God in the final day. And that's where the confusion is coming in. How is God justified in having taken the course that he did in bringing about his own self-glorification? And specifically in the salvation of a utterly undeserving people, a people that deserved wrath for justice to be done, and yet it's not done to them, and why? And it seems to me that what he's saying is that the good works that are produced in the life of the believer through the work of the Spirit, which everyone confesses is a biblical concept. We are saved by faith alone, but not a faith that is alone. Well, okay, when I say everybody, leave the cheap gracers, free gracers off to the side. They're not a part of this group. They're not a part of this conversation. That's out there. Leave them off to the side. Amongst Orthodox Reformed people, we've always emphasized and recognized that it is God's intention to justify his elect and to sanctify his elect. His elect are always sanctified by the work of Christ. But then we have those statements like God's will for you is your sanctification, your growth in holiness. And that therefore those good works which are performed by grace are justifying of God's actions, not of man's standing. So that it's the righteousness of Christ alone that brings about one's salvation and eternal standing before God. But then in the concept of the judgment at the end, and we always think of judgment only of mankind. But remember, I don't have it in here, but am I remembering correctly that Piper's dissertation on Romans 9, wasn't it called the justification of God? That's just off the top of my head. I should have looked it up. I'm sorry. Maybe someone can verify that in channel. But the idea is that at the final judgment, there's not just the justification of mankind in the sense of they're right before me, but there's also justification of God. The demonstration that the triune God has acted justly and righteously in bringing about his own glorification through the gospel and the salvation of an elect people. And in that context, the good that has been done by grace in the life of the redeemed is a part of the justification of God's actions, not an increasing or a changing or a modification of the grounds upon which those people have the right relationship to God. That's my best reading. Yeah, it is called the justification of God. Thank you very much, those people in the channel. That's my reading. I'm not trying, like I said, I don't know John Piper. I'm never going to be invited to a John Piper event. I'm not trying to schmooze anybody. But in reading Piper, I think that's where the emphasis needs to be placed in his understanding, is this idea of theodicy, that is the justification of God. And so he's looking beyond the issue of man's justification to the idea of God's justification in the means by which he brought these things about. Now, if you want to argue about that, great, fine, wonderful. If Dr. Piper would like to give me a call and explain where I misunderstood him, then I'll be happy to withdraw what I said. But it seems like a charitable and accurate reading that probably will not be accepted by anyone, because it just seems like most of us just simply want to get behind barricades and lob bombs these days, rather than go, oh, well, I hadn't thought about it that way. I'm not sure that I put it that way, but, I don't know, folks. I'm just really tired of Christians shooting their own wounded at times. It's look for, I've believe it or not, I know a lot of people don't think this is true of me, but I very often try to listen to people in such a way that I don't have to take offense at them. You know, just between you and me, just don't let this out anywhere. But I've actually written to Doug Wilson and said that he's one of the finest writers I've ever read. Now, I debated Doug Wilson, and Doug Wilson and I disagree on a bunch of things. But I don't think there's something wrong with my enjoying Doug Wilson when he's right. And evidently, that's a bad thing in the minds of some. You can't do that. I think it's that fundamentalist separation idea. Nope, you can't. No. Okay, all right. Well, there you go. So I suppose there are some people who look at Galatians 2 and they go, well, that's Piper. Throw Piper in there. Do I agree with everything John Piper's done? No. Do you have to agree with everything I've ever done? No. Does that mean you can't learn anything from either one of us? No. It's maturity, man. We gotta have some level of maturity.